everyone, this is Mack from Rainforest Reptile Shows. So yesterday we posted a video talking a little bit about the difference between copperheads and some of our native species. And we have something really cool for you guys today. We actually have a northern copperhead here at our sanctuary, and we're just going to talk a little bit about kind of what they look like and things to look out for if you were out in places where they may be out and about. So this animal here, this is a venomous species. You can see that I have these snake hooks. I'm maintaining a safe distance, making sure that I'm not putting my hands on the animal in any way, shape, or form. But in general, there's a couple of different distinguishing factors when it comes to copperheads. In a couple minutes, I'll go ahead and grab our non-venomous friends, the eastern milksnake, and we can compare and contrast. But this animal, the most common thing that you hear from people is venomous snakes in Massachusetts have a vertical pupil. If you're getting that close to tell, you're too close to the snake. Don't do that. The other thing you'll hear is about their heads. So if you zoom in on his head here, they have that triangle-shaped head. Snake species here that can actually flatten out their head and make it look more triangular. The really only true way to tell if you know if it's a copperhead, a milksnake, or a banded water snake here in Massachusetts is by knowing the species. Copperheads have these bands that go across their body, and they're that copper color. That's where they get their name, copperhead. And these colorations are really beautiful, and they have that venom for a very specific reason. Now, they're considered a mildly venomous species. When we're talking about venom, mild is still venom. So it is something that they will do some damage if they were to inject venom. In the wild, they're much less likely to use that venom in a defensive nature because they need it to help hunt their prey. And it takes a lot of energy to continually produce new venom for them to use against that prey item. So you can see here, these animals, this animal will probably get a little bit bigger, but not by a ton. They are absolutely beautiful creatures. They will be tongue flicking. Most likely what they're going to do is they're going to be in places that are rocky. They love to den up in rocky structures. The most important thing when you're walking your pets, you're walking yourself, your kids, anything like that, is if you see a snake and you're not sure what species it is, give it its healthy distance. Make sure that wildlife stays in the wild and that these animals are respected. They're so incredibly important. Venomous snakes, they sound scary, but they have that venom for a very specific purpose, and they're extremely effective predators. Without snakes, and venomous snakes in particular, we have increases of populations of mice and different animals that can become nuisance species and actually cause significant issues. Things like there's been direct correlations of tick population increases and the decline of things like timber rattlesnakes and copperheads. And that's because when ticks start their life cycles, they're going to be attaching onto things like rats and mice. And then over time, they're going to be building up into bigger species. And then sometimes our dogs, our cats, and ourselves, and it can lead to getting diseases like Lyme disease. So they are critically important. If you see a snake like this, you don't need to panic. Just make sure you give them safe distance. And one really important thing, I've seen a couple people say that they have licensed rehabbers to be able to take these animals. Now, that might be the case. However, the only people permitted to move a venomous snake in the state of Massachusetts are the environmental police officers. The only time anyone else would be allowed to do so is if they got strict permission from the Massachusetts Environmental Police. So if you hear of someone talking about those different factors, the only people licensed to do it are Massachusetts Environmental Police. Please be aware, do not try and move them yourself. And it is illegal to kill or harm an endangered species here in the state. Copperheads, as well as timber rattlesnakes, are both endangered. Again, be mindful of your wildlife, and they are so incredibly important. We don't want to kill them. We don't want to hurt them. They offer such a unique niche, and they're such beautiful, pretty animals. Venom is not typically used for defensive mechanisms. However, it could be. It's primarily for catching their food. You can actually see the difference between the two different species. On the right-hand side, or closest to you guys, is the eastern milksnake. And he likes to move around a little bit more than our copperhead friends. but you can see how close they look in coloration. So there's a few different factors that you're going to be looking for when you're looking at these species. You can see there is definitely a clear coloration difference, but every snake is an individual and they all might look slightly different. In addition, you'll see on the side of the copperhead here that they have those really beautiful markings that go up the side, as well as the bands that go across their body. With the eastern milk snakes, it's going to look more like blotches that go across their back and don't always continue all the way down to their ventral scales. It's also a much rounded, more individual. So guys, you can see here, do you think this is a copperhead or a milk snake? Well, I think your first clue is probably I'm holding one and I wasn't holding the other. So this is actually an eastern milk snake. And this is one of the most commonly misidentified species that we have here in the state of Massachusetts. Everyone sees these guys and they immediately think, oh no, it's a copperhead. Well, this is not a copperhead. And you can tell from a couple of different ways. So when you look at their heads, it is a little bit more rounded. However, that's not always a great indicator. You can also see along his face, he has these black vertical bars that go down right by his mouth area, and he's just a little nervous and shy today, which is okay. So you can see those black bars that go down. When people do talk about their rounded pupils versus the vertical pupils, that can be a distinguishing factor for some of these guys, but again, if you're getting that close, you're too close. But they do have those rounded pupils. The other portion that you're going to be looking for is that distinct coloration. So these guys are typically more brown in coloration. They're not that reddish copper color like the copperhead has. However, each one is an individual, and some of them might be different or might have more reds in them. You can also tell that if you look at the patterning across his body here, that it's much more of a rounded blotch coloration. He's getting up close and personal to me. He's just saying hello, so you can see those pupils, you know? So, friends, you can see those rounded blotch colorations, as well as on the bottom of their body, those black markings that they have on their ventral scales. Copperheads will also have that, but there are some definitely distinct individual characteristics for these species. Again, if you don't know what species it is, do not try and do what I'm doing. I know this is 100% a milk snake, and you could tell before, I'm not picking up a copperhead. That could really end poorly for me and would definitely put me in the hospital. When you're looking at a snake like this, he's only about this tall off of the ground. We're giants to a snake like this. Or if a pet were to try and go up to them, they look like predators, so they may try and turn and strike as a last-ditch effort. But most of the time, their first thing they're going to do is to try and run away. And there's absolutely beautiful animals. If you guys have any other questions regarding these species, I'll be able to answer any questions that you might have. We really, really want to make sure that everyone is educated on this subject because we don't want anyone to have an unnecessary fear of the snakes in general. They are so incredibly important, and we need to be able to live with our animal. Nature is so incredibly important, and these animals do offer that special niche of eating all different kinds of nuisance species that could cause some significant problems without them. Alright friends, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope I was able to answer some of your questions. If you have any other questions, again, leave them in any comments down below. We appreciate you guys taking the time, and have a wonderful rest of your day.